Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech from Big 12 Media Days, Joey Maguire discusses making leaders out of newcomers and other adventures in art and science, and Brett Yormark doubles down for the good of the game.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, and right now new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet hits. So visit FanDuel.com today to get started. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you with now day one of Big 12 Media Days in the rear view. Of course, that includes sound from the Red Raider contingency. We'll get into some of that on today's episode. We'll also get into some thoughts from Brett Yormark, Big 12 commissioner, as he goes double down mode, taking a stand, of course, for the good of the game. We'll get to that in just a moment, but want to start with Joey Maguire and Texas Tech interests, and want to start with some sound in the realm of something we discussed on yesterday's episode regarding what would be questioned or what questions would center upon, and that being a big offseason effort and portal impact that we've seen already as far as the roster building is concerned. Hopefully we're going to see that in the fall as well as far as the actual football playing from that roster is concerned. But let's take a listen to Red Raider head coach Joey Maguire talking about, the last few months.
It's been a fun offseason. We were really aggressive whenever it came to the portal and meeting some of our needs for the football team. I've been really proud of those guys for, I always look at what's the feel in the locker room culturally, the standard that we practice at, but then other things. Like this is the third semester in a row that we've had a 3.0 or better as a GPA. And we brought in all those new guys. A lot of them have already graduated from college, but are still taking 12 hours, and we're able to do that in the classroom. I know there's a lot of expectations on the team. We look at it as opportunities. Jack Richards, a good friend of mine, went to Texas Tech. Son played at Texas Tech, and he sent me that text. He says, expectation or opportunities, it's all perspective. And we look at it that we have a great opportunity. I think this conference is really strong. There's a lot of teams that have some big opportunities this year to really make a statement, and we're planning on being one of them.
Chris, we knew this would be a subject that was going to be discussed and will continue to be discussed, but I thought Coach Maguire delivered quite the descriptor when saying we were aggressive in the portal. That is the beginning of it, but obviously not the end of it. And some interesting thoughts regarding, I guess, the burden of expectation, or maybe sort of the encouraging challenge of opportunity that got ahead of them. All depends on how you look at it, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and again, are you a fan? Are you a coach? Are you an administrator? Are you a donor? Yeah, you maybe have different thoughts depending on who you are versus either opportunity or expectation. But that's I think everybody is in line with the fact that they wanted to create opportunity, and I think I don't want to say there was regret, but maybe they didn't do enough the year before, and had they, maybe they do win that one more game and get to Arlington and all those things. But it's led us to this point, and you get oh so close. And I think that if you really look at it, if you dig into why you have an opportunity and why there's certain other teams that are being mentioned in an upper tier, it's really all about the lines of scrimmage. I think that's exactly why Iowa State and Kansas State and Utah and Baylor. I'm trying to think if I'm leaving anybody out. Arizona State, obviously. I mean, it's there's a lot of things that go with it, but it's what they did on the lines of scrimmage, or what they have, or what they have coming back, or what they added, or that they've got depth, or that they're just going to be really solid up front. And some of these other teams don't have those answers. And this has quickly become kind of a line of scrimmage conference. And I think you hear Joey saying lots of good teams, and all those things. But and I've told you this before, Callan, but this is really their biggest challenge. Is like I think that this program has done a really good job, like legitimately good job of creating buzz, creating momentum, creating interest, relevancy, whether it's portal, whether it's recruiting, whether it's facility, whether it's the cactus. I don't know, whatever else you want to come up with that gets them kind of in the news and all the things, and it gets people excited. It gets people reason to buy in. But what you kind of hear Joey saying right there without actually saying it is they've got to figure out a way to create the same interest and buzz in November and not in December with the portal, or in April or May with recruiting, or in June with recruiting, or whatever. That's because that's what it all points to. And so and again, they were aggressive, and they've given themselves an opportunity to create that buzz in those crucial months. And as we know, you got to take care of business in September, October. Or you don't have a chance to create any buzz in November. But that's what this points to.
Yeah, and I think all of those types of things would wear thin pretty quickly, that type of attention or that type of conversation, if there wasn't at least some sliver of some on-field performance as well. To their credit, we have been buzzing in some of these months, in months we haven't been previously, or in prior administrations or eras. Chris, there was a year where for the first time, and the only so far in your program's history, you knock off the Longhorns and the Sooners in the same season. You've had some fun bowl success really this last time around. And I think this is kind of an interesting angle on this offseason, in that you did not have the success that you wanted in your bowl setting, yet it almost feels like that got flipped really quickly as far as the page goes, because of all the fun we had with the transfer window. So I think there's plenty on the field to look at as well, to say that's why it's been sort of fun with some of these other like side narratives or things to follow in national media, or the reaction from opponents or other enemies and foes across the state and beyond. But if there wasn't something happening, at least as far as some semblance of a pulse on the field, I think people would grow bored or tired with it very, very quickly. So to their credit, while we want to be buzzing again, and buzzing to an even greater degree in October and November, there have been some buzzworthy moments already. And I think that's why there's still so much sort of momentum or kind of steam behind also the support base of this program, whether it's, the smallest contributor to the Matador Club or some of the biggest. A lot of that's got to be happening at the same time. It's not just some of the stuff that happens within the media itself, but obviously between the lines, they've showed up. But you're looking to take that next step and be in a hardware conversation, which I guess is the hardest one to take, aside from staying there. When you finally get there, you've pointed that out before, maintaining or sustaining that type of relevancy.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, because I think that was a lot of the conversation on day one of the media day there in Frisco, was about some of the programs like a Kansas State, like an Iowa State. I think Arizona State's trying to achieve this, although they've got hardware though there now that they can point to. But that's what Texas Tech is also trying to achieve while trending up. You're coming off of a decade where it just wasn't very good, and now, to what you're pointing to, is that Joey's kind of had this thing trending up. You've been to three bowl games in a row. You've had three winning records in the Big 12 in a row. But it's the next step that's the hardest, and then when you get to that next step, it's staying there that's even harder than the previous one. So but we're not even having this conversation. You're right. If you don't have moments to where you really did some special things, and maybe donors, or maybe the whole machine isn't motivated enough, or it just feels like it's so far off if you aren't really
Yeah.
close like you were last year. I think that's worth pointing out too. But and you and I have talked about this before, but what if you had won one extra game, last year, and you played in Arlington? And I don't know what the result was. It doesn't matter for purposes of this conversation. Would your roster look anywhere near the same as it does right now had you won that extra game, had you held on in Fort Worth last year. I don't know. I tend to think probably not. So I don't know what that means. I don't know
Hey, where
if
are we at if the O'Bannon brother doesn't sue the NCAA once upon a time? We didn't just give millions to an offensive tackle. So God
yeah.
bless a divine plan, Chris. Who am I as the clay to question the potter? I'm just glad to be riding the ride that we've been riding that's led us here. But yeah, taking that final step, it's all about, as you mentioned, those guys in the trenches. And I do want to get a little bit further, maybe this week or as we roll into some coming days, into some specifics that Coach Maguire discussed regarding, say, the return of Micah Hudson or a wide receiver you talked about on yesterday's program a little bit in Caleb Douglas. But one thing I thought was interesting also was him talking about how they look to give some of these newcomers who were impactful players at their prior stops, how they look to give some of them voices almost upon arrival. First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, and summer sports are in full swing. Whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action, so why not make it a little more thrilling? And with FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet only $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet hits. Again, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. So open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. How they look to give some of them voices almost upon arrival. They wanted to let them be, kind of the presences or leaders that they would have been in a setting that they had been in for year over year over year. And then he also spoke about sort of the character, I guess, that required a guy to have to be given that kind of leeway or to be given that kind of thing, that kind of credibility just upon arrival. And again, this is all sort of playing out on paper to those of us on the outside. I know those on the inside are experiencing some of these things already. We'll really see what happens when the lights come on. But that was also an interesting part, I thought, of Coach Maguire's conversation with the media, was talking about the character that they had to really vet and try to secure in each of these individuals. And part of that being because they wanted them to be able to step into, I guess, leadership roles. I don't know if that's the right way to describe it, but like he said, he wanted them to have a voice when they got here, because it's important for players that are going to be that impactful, I think, to have that type of maybe credibility, but hard to establish just, on day one.
Joey will be graded more on this kind of thing and how the culture goes than he will on if he decided to go for it on fourth down or punt on fourth down, or he told the coordinator, hey, speed it up, slow it down, whatever, any X's and O's, because if they chose correctly, and I think that they're hoping that they did, and I'll be shocked if they chose 100% correctly. That would be, but you're trying to bring in people that you do trust, and that I think he talked a lot about. We try to figure out what their why is. Like, why is this important to them? Is it the NFL? Is it you want to win a conference championship? You want to win a national championship? You want to actually play? You want to start? What, maybe it's you're checking all the boxes, who knows, but you try to figure, I want to get closer to home, I don't know. So they try to figure out, okay, what's your motivation here. And all the while, like, if you've got to be careful with very talented players that, again, you don't necessarily know their why, they're just really good, you don't know what makes them tick. And then are they going to be the ones that check out when things don't go well because they're only worried about themselves and all that stuff? And so there's an art to this,
Oh,
from
yeah.
Joey and his staff of, hey, let's empower some of these guys. We can't empower all of them. I mean, you can't have 85 to 100 leaders on a football team. Some guys naturally want to do that. Some guys are naturally under the radar. But I think Joey had you bring in this much, age and experience. Some of these guys are going to emerge, and the last thing you want to do is muzzle them and be like, "Hey, man, you got to earn it here," and all that stuff. That's just a different day and age. So I think Joey's perfect. That's why he's such a great fit in 2025. He's perfect with the art of kind of the feel of what's needed. And and like it's worth mentioning too, like like you're at a media day deal, there's little national people there, right? And you got regional, all the local beat writer people, national, all the above. I mean, it's a massive event with, I don't know if they credential 200, 300, 500, whatever media members, but there's plenty of national folks there. And that's the beauty of Joey, is that he has an art of making those local and national folks all feel like they're buddies. And so I just think that, and he does this with his team, especially so. If you think you're some media guy out here, you and I included, Cowan, that we're tight with him. I mean, that's how everybody feels, but he especially makes, his players feel a certain way, and that's the trick. Now, did they score enough points and stop the other guy from scoring enough points and all that? And did they get along and all that? That's what remains to be seen. But he's definitely got a gift there, that's for sure.
There's a little art to it. There's a little science to it. A little good luck, just a little GATA, something probably added in on top of that. And maybe it adds up to a successful 12 weeks at least of regular season football, and then see what happens on the other side. But I do want to dive back into some of the specifics on some of these individuals that he discussed on some upcoming episodes. So we'll do that. Before we move on from Coach Maguire, is there anything else that stood out to you, Chris, as far as not only his time at the big podium, but he's making appearances on some of these various shows as well? Any comments that we need to mention before we get on with it?
Well, I can't remember what he said was, but there's the Big 12 has this deal with the WWE, what they hand out title belts, and there's this collaborative effort and all those things. But I did hear somebody asked him if he was a wrestler, what his wrestling name would be, and he said something like the mean mass rider. I can't remember what he said. It just made me laugh because Joey, he grew up in the Metroplex like I did. He loved you and I've talked about that before, the wrestling stuff. And so I know that's scratching him where he itches, to borrow your phrase, because that's just something he grew up with, right? And so it's just funny that somehow wrestling has crossed over into his job as a head football coach. The other thing that I appreciated, it hits close to home, although I'm not at home right now as I'm talking to you. But I appreciated what he said about Mike, and I don't know if he was asked about it but last year he showed up and he opened up the sport coat, and it was like what didn't he have, like the pirate stuff and everything inside of his,
Yeah, like the skull and crossbones. I
yeah,
think.
exactly, and it was like a tip of the cap to Coach Leach. And since then, it's fairly recent, and you and I have talked about it. They've kind of adjusted the criteria. Archie Manning had a big say so in that. They've adjusted the criteria on the College Football Hall of Fame. So, bottom line is Mike Leach is going to be, he'll be inducted or be nominated or be eligible, whatever, for the College Football Hall of Fame. And at some point, he was like a tenth of a percentage point too shy of what you have to have. And Cowan, and I told you this as it happened, like literally minutes after it happened. I'm in Cody, Wyoming a few days ago on this trip that I'm on, and this is where Mike grew up. And we were going to the Cody Night Rodeo on a Saturday night, or excuse me, on a Sunday night and everything. But we're the part of the deal that I'm on. They took us to this Buffalo Bill Museum, and it's massive. It's like part of the Smithsonian and all that. It's all kinds of things going on. And I'm walking through that deal, and I kid you not, I see who I think is Sharon Leach. And I almost didn't say anything. She was with what I'm going to guess were some grandkids. And I just said, Sharon? And she turned around like, who would be calling my name? And so we had a very brief, good conversation. And so I say all that to say that I really appreciate, like, Joey going out of his way to tip his cap to folks that came before him. And Joey's comment about Mike totally changed the game of football. And you and I have talked about this so much, and so I'm not going to rehash it all, but he's dead on. He's not, there's no ego with Coach Maguire, in that some people would be afraid of that, or try to shy away from it, or be nervous about it and try to, hey, I'm going to be my own man or do my own thing. No, he stares it right in the face, and continues to pay homage to it. So anyway, I just yeah, kind of a cool deal there. But yeah, it was really good to see Sharon the other day.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that about what he had to say about Coach Leach. He was quoted by Pete Thamel as saying, quote, "There are very few coaches that have changed the game. I'm excited that Mike Leach is now eligible for the Hall of Fame because you start questioning a Hall of Fame if Mike Leach is not in it because Mike Leach
Yes.
changed the game of football." Do you get it, Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
Somebody did somewhere, I guess, because we're expecting that to transpire very soon. And I love the story about Mrs. Leach in Cody, Wyoming. To me, that's very ominish of you to see her there. And I'm feeling like when Tom Hanks saw Stillwell take the mitt to the face, we're going to win. It's going to be a great year in West Texas, Chris. I think that's a positive sign. You want to talk about total cosmic convergence. That's amazing. It is a small world after all. Okay, let's get to one more thing before we wrap up today's conversation from day one of Big 12 Media Days, and that involving the conference commissioner. I got to tell you, this is kind of like the open mic conference whenever you're talking about entertainment value, and there's some more coming up on day two because whether it's somebody like Joey Maguire, Kenny Dillingham, or Deion Sanders, or Mike Gundy, I mean, who can blame them? They're sort of just taking a page from the commissioner, Chris. He's always entertaining himself when he's on the mic, and he's not really seemingly afraid to be transparent when he wants to on any topic here or there. You think it kind of has to do sometimes with maybe leverage that he views as being there when he wants to use some of that transparency. I don't know. But it was interesting to hear from Brett Yormark today on a variety of subjects. I just want to touch on one with you, a comment that's getting quite a bit of attention here today. And of course, it's involving a subject we've discussed a lot here, and pretty much anybody considering college sports has discussed, and that's the future of the college football playoff and the formats we like best. Brett Yormark, God bless him for love of the game, just like we do here in Big 12 country, is doubling down once again, 5-11. Here's Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark.
I was recently in North Carolina. We had a CFP meeting that was hosted by the executive director, Richard Clark, who is here today. Welcome, Richard. They are doing a full audit of the selection process to figure out how they can modernize and contemporize and how they use data and how certain metrics can be more heavily weighted. Most importantly, they have a great leader, Mack Rhoades of Baylor. And I have a lot of faith in Mack Rhoades and the work he's doing with the selection committee. So I have a lot of faith in what they're doing. And 5-11 is fair. We want to earn it on the field. It might not be the best solution today for the Big 12, given your comments about AQs. But long term, knowing the progress we're making, the investments we're making, it's the right format for us. And I'm doubling down today on 5-11. And I know Jim Phillips will, and I'm sure some of the other conference commissioners will as well.
Interesting comments, Chris, there. And he's sticking with, of course, some consistent talking points that we have heard from him previously. We'll see what happens with other commissioners coming up at their respective media days. Curious as to your reaction on the comments in general. And what do you think he means when he really says it may not be the best right now for the Big 12, but possibly long term? How do you process that part?
Well, so a couple things. He's basically telling you that they are going to it is going to expand to 16. So I think that should not be lost, is that at some point this thing is going to get expanded to 16, and sounds like sooner than later. He's telling you in the midst of this commentary, I think he's basically saying that the ACC is on board. We already know that the coaches from the SEC hints that the SEC is on board. So I think with him using this platform, Cowan, he's kind of calling out the Big Ten. He's kind of, I mean, because they're the ones that have pushed the AQ model. I thought that may not necessarily be a bad thing for the Big 12. I totally get why Yormark is saying we're not doing that, and for reasons that I didn't ultimately think of in those terms. In that you're basically just admitting you're half as good, and you're that's what your worth is, and so how do you sell your league and all the things, right? But what your Mark is saying is, I think in the short term, we may be at a bit of a disadvantage. We may not get more than the one bid. We've got to, because you don't have enough body of work to say, he's pointing to the basketball deal. And he said it repeatedly. And I don't disagree with him. We've had the best league in basketball the last 10 years. And I think that you've got national championships, national championship game appearances, and Final Four appearances, and Elite Eight appearance. I mean, you've got all that to prove it, but you don't have that in the CFP. So I think, are you going to get the benefit of the doubt? No. Um, and hence the reason that they did away with the Big 12 football media poll. Just said, hey, yeah, we're squashing it. He tells you that they will do one in basketball. But football, he felt like it hurt him. So you're fighting a perception, and he knows that. And until you prove otherwise, you are at a bit of a disadvantage. But he feels like this is the best thing for the sport, and it's kind of all eyes on the Big Ten right now. Honestly, I think the other three leagues are in lockstep as far as what they hope will be done, and I don't know. I guess we'll find out how big of a stick the Big Ten has, or if they can come up with an alternative or whatever. But yeah, I think pretty important news there for the future of the sport, kind of on the way Yormark felt and what he said, and I mean doubling down. I mean, we know what that means if you're going to Vegas, right? Push them all into the middle.
Crystal clear what that means. Chris, appreciate your time as always, man. Enjoyed it. That was only day one from Big 12 Media Days. We'll see what else there is to process, and want to continue the Texas Tech specific part of the conversation with you regarding some of the individual players and storylines that Coach Maguire touched on as we're looking ahead to 2025 on some subsequent rounds of the podcast coming up. So appreciate your time on the road, the devotion to Locked On Texas Tech. Fam Damley never wanes. We're ripping him away from some of the most pristine creation known to man, folks, and he's still making time for Locked On Texas Tech. So thank you, Chris, and we'll see you for the next one.
My pleasure. I never thought I would shoot a video of myself in front of Old Faithful and Mount Rushmore, but I was like,
That's
hey,
right.
man, this is perfect. This is perfect. Yeah. So we live in a beautiful country. I was glad I got to see some of it, stuff that I had never seen before. But yeah, happy to take you on the road with me, Cowan, and the show. Yeah, there we go.
I appreciate that. And maybe next time around, not so much of a virtual experience. I would love to travel with the Level family. In-laws, outlaws, anybody in between. So you guys roll it around, maybe 2026. All right. Thanks for your time, Chris. And thank you to everybody for being out there. Get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. Thanks to the everydayers for always riding along, no matter where in the world we may be beaming him from. And shout out to the Matador Mob. At the show notes and find a link to a free 14-day trial. If you're interested in joining that crew, that's your direct line to Chris and myself with one-on-one text and straight to your phone. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks as always for the time. We hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.